Welcome to the Rev Up, the show where we talk about all things sales, marketing, and everything that encapsulates revenue growth. Today on the show, I am super excited to have my good friend Sian Jenkins. Sian is the Marketing Director at Genesys, who are a cloud contact center and customer experience platform. One of the biggest in the world, certainly a market leader, and a platform that I have actually used myself in the past when I ran some larger contact center based teams offshore. Today, we are going to talk really specifically about marketing. We're going to talk pretty in depth about demand generation. We're going to get into some conversation around demand generation through events. A lot of what works and what doesn't work isn't necessarily always something you can completely track digitally. And so we talk quite a bit about how do you decide what works and what doesn't, and how do you make the most out of things like events. We also talk quite a bit about other demand generation opportunities and a couple of the tracks that Genesys are going down, including things like account-based marketing, which is a very exciting track and obviously a very hot topic at the moment. Really excited for this conversation, really excited for you guys to get some amazing insights from somebody who is as good at all of this stuff as Sian is. So over to us. Welcome to the Rev Up, Sian Jenkins.
Thank you, Ben. Excited to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you. We obviously know each other from, interacting a lot over the years, but also we used to work together, which is a pretty common theme here on the Rev Up, particularly former colleagues from a little events company known as IQPC. It's funny, I actually talked about this a bit with one of our mutual friends, Carl Price, when he came on the Rev Up. Just how the talent density that we had back in those times in IQPC, because we're talking 10, 12 years ago, maybe more, and but the sheer volume of people that came out of that time and went on to do like amazing things, either running their own businesses or in really senior positions, is kind of overwhelming.
Agree. Yeah, they certainly did an amazing job of attracting and retaining for quite some time really good talent at IQPC, especially during that period. I mean, I'm sure they still do now, but yeah, it is interesting to look at how many of us are still in similar fields, but working, owning own businesses or senior positions. It's great to watch everyone's progress.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see. Yours included. I mean, obviously, when we worked together, I was a salesperson. You were a marketing manager, senior marketing manager maybe, and then kind of progressing on from there, each on our own paths. Why don't you maybe just give a little bit of background for the listeners, for the audience, just on, kind of where you came from in this whole world of marketing and kind of what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So, you mentioned IQPC. That was an events company, or is an events company, and it was my first job when I moved to Australia. So I'm originally from the UK. So yeah, IQPC was my kind of landing pad here in Sydney. I spent, I think it was around 5 years in the Sydney office. But prior to that, I was working in the UK, mainly in London, for events companies. So various different types of events, all kind of B2B conferences, but across different industries. So kind of did legal, financial, I started off in like plastics and packaging and and then energy, oil and gas. So they're like really varied industries. But yeah, as a marketer, so marketing those events, that the business model for that kind of B2B conferencing is sponsorship and delegate revenue. So essentially my role was, to market that and to hit those targets and actually make the events profitable. The event was the product that we were selling. So yeah, moved to Australia, worked with IQPC for about 5 years. Again, lots of different industries. Mining was one of them that was brand new to me when I moved here. So learning about the mining industry and selling events in that space, and also creating a community for mining execs. And then from there, I moved to Singapore, still with IQPC, but with a kind of data analytics startup subsidiary kind of thing that they launched over there, that was called DART Institute originally, and then it became known as SSON Analytics. But yeah, really interesting experience that was, because for me it was the first time ever working for a kind of startup environment. When I first joined, there was just two of us, that our kind of managing director, Emma, and myself, and grew out to about 12 people. And that was a completely new industry. It wasn't conferences. We were using the data that we extracted from events to be able to package that up and sell it as insights, data and analytics insights. So yeah, that was really great. Spent about 2.5 years in Singapore. Had lots of fun. And then, but miss Sydney. I love it here.
Yeah.
Love the lifestyle, the open spaces, blue skies. So yeah, eventually found my way back here, and I'm now working for a technology company called Genesys. It is a customer experience software company, US based, but we have a really big presence across APAC and certainly in Australia and New Zealand. So I now look after marketing for kind of half of APAC, for Australia and New Zealand, India and Southeast Asia, with teams in those regions. And it's actually pretty broad role. So look at various different aspects of marketing. So it's kind of field, partner, digital, customer advocacy and engagement, a bit of PR. So yeah, working very closely with our sales teams and our SDR teams, and trying to bring better customer experiences to all of us as customers. So that's pretty much in a nutshell.
Yeah. That so many people, I think, find that corporate events background is almost like a PhD in commercial relationships, like buyer-seller dynamics in markets, and having to rapidly test and adjust messaging and understanding of how even down to the extent of how people in a particular industry talk, what language they use, and being able to kind of adapt into that. I think it's basically a marketing commercialization PhD as far as I'm concerned. It's really interesting that you have such a, I suppose, like a broad coverage of things that you're involved in. And the fact that you're involved in field marketing, having come from an events marketing background, did that play a part in that? Is that something you found to be sort of helpful?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that I was obviously very experienced in the event space, and I was marketing events, and obviously part of that marketing was being around them, attending them, seeing how they work, what makes a good event, what doesn't. So yeah, when I initially moved back to Australia from Singapore and got the role with Genesys, my role was kind of ANZ field marketing. It's kind of broadened in scope and developed across different geographical regions now. But yeah, it was very much, I would say even now, events make up a really big part of our marketing mix. And that's us, that's our own events, our own, putting on our own events as a technology vendor, and also attending and sponsoring events, putting on events with our partners. So yeah, definitely having that background, like I said, it really it was something that was kind of, without sounding cliched, it was sort of in my DNA. I know how to put on an event. I know what you need to think about to make it to make it work, and to deliver a really good experience for your attendees, and also make it work for yourself as a business and get what you need out of it. So yeah, events still play a really big part in my kind of day-to-day life, work life, for sure. But it's definitely a lot broader now. It's not just events, but still a key part. Yeah.
Well, it may be broader now, but I want to ask you some stuff about events, because look, there's lots of people out there that are using events to drive business growth. I think for a lot of them, sometimes it's hard for them to quantify exactly what they're getting out of those events. Sometimes when it's maybe a smaller roundtables and things like that, you can kind of see direct pipeline driven from them, etc. But what do you find is important to actually getting a good result, a commercial result out of running events, out of using events as part of the marketing mix?
Yeah, look, I mean, us as marketers, most of the time, most of us are driven on pipeline and revenue. That's our KPIs. That's what we are, need to deliver day to day, and that's a lot of the time what we're assessing the effectiveness of any activity against. Did it deliver pipeline? Has it delivered opportunities? What's the revenue from this? I think with events you have to take a broader lens, because yes, ultimately, of course, we want events to deliver pipeline, but a lot of the time that pipeline delivery from events is going to be much later. It's not going to be 1 month after the event. It might be in some cases. There's often you often do get 1 or 2 opportunities from an event that might pop up just within a few weeks, and that's brilliant. But I think a lot of the broader lens you need to take is that, number one, brand building and getting your brand message across at the event, actually being able to, whether this is your own event that you are putting on yourselves and fully organizing and managing, or whether it's an industry event that you're being a part of as a sponsor. I think you've really got to think about, what are you getting across in terms of your brand and your messaging? So, that's through presentations, a formal presenting on stage kind of thing. But also just through the conversations that you're having, your people who are there at that event, the conversations that you're having with people, and the overall impression and that you're building of your company to, face-to-face, one-on-one to people. So I think there's the brand building, and then there's the relationship building. It's getting in front of those people. It's meeting. Oh, and I feel like I'm stating the obvious here, but it is meeting. It's expanding your network. It's meeting, new contacts, and again, building your brand with them, but building that relationship with them. And I think that sometimes when we're purely measuring pipeline generation, opportunity generation immediately off the back of an event, that doesn't capture all of that stuff. It doesn't capture, that you might have had the CIO of, Westpac or whatever that you interacted with, or you might not have even interacted with them, but that they were at an event, a year ago, and they heard a really amazing story from a customer of yours. The customer might have been on stage telling a story, or they might have been, one-to-one conversations, but they heard this amazing story that stuck in their head. And that's, 12 months down the line, when they're actually maybe considering and actually in a state where they're more closer to buying, that little nugget of, oh yeah, I did hear XYZ company speaking about working with Genesys, from my perspective. And that was actually a really great story I heard. And, it's that building that trust and building that kind of brand value. And I think that if you're just focused on pipeline generation metrics from an event, it's really hard to capture that. And it doesn't capture that. And it is hard to capture all that other stuff I've just been talking about, full stop. That is really difficult. But I think that we need to take a broader perspective with events. And I think also some of the measurement, it does actually come back to what your people on the ground at the event experienced. Did they have lots of good conversations with people? If it's a no, okay, you're probably not going to, we're not going to say we develop great relationships necessarily from it. And that does happen a lot. You might go to an event and you think actually I didn't really connect with the right people here. I don't really feel like I had that many really valuable conversations. And yeah, that's an instance where you have to kind of put your hands up and say we probably didn't hit any kind of relationship building, that many relationship building goals at this event. But then you can have others where you go, we have brilliant conversations. You know, we were so busy the whole time, whether you're at a booth or whether you're just kind of networking, but so busy the whole time. I've got all these follow-up actions from this event I'm going to do. In that case, you know, there's a lot of momentum coming out of that, and there probably is, you know, it is going to lead to things further down the track, even if it's not this immediate open an opportunity, you know, allocate pipeline to it kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a tough one because, you know, we always want to have some level of certainty. Like how much, give me a random stab in the dark here. Like, to what percentage do you think it's just like, I just have to take a gut feel on this. I got to take the feedback, the things I can't, you know, I mean, I have a slightly counter opinion on this, that opinion is measurement to a degree, right? Like, if you've been at the event and you had great conversations and you feel like you made an impact, that, to me, that is a level of measurement. But to what percentage is it like, just got to trust, I know this works, I can't measure it particularly well, or the measurement is imperfect, and how much of it can we actually capture and quantify?
Yeah, look, I think it's a mixture. I think both play a part, and I totally agree with you. Sometimes it is a, you know, measuring that the opinion of the teams, the team that was on the ground, and what they, you know, the conversations they had. But there are lots of other different measures. So, you know, we talked about like pipeline and opportunity generation as kind of number one. There's also, of course, you know, just good old leads. You know, how many new contacts have you gathered from this event? How many, you know, different personas have you interacted with? What's your percentage of customers versus prospects that you managed to interact with at the event? So yeah, simple kind of lead measurement also can play into it. Another thing we measure at Genesys is pipeline growth after the event. So like, and we measure that at 3-month intervals. So like pipeline growth 3 months after the event, 6 months after the event, 9 months after, so that we can say, okay, you know, we were at this particular event. All of these companies that were there that we interacted with, overall was X amount of pipeline from those companies when the event was on at that time. And I'm not saying that was pipeline generated from the event. I mean, pre-existing pipeline that was already open. Mm-hmm. And then over time, we look at what's the growth rate of that pipeline. And we can also compare that to other companies of a similar demographic that weren't in this particular event. Again, it's not a perfect measure. It's not saying this pipeline grew just because of this event, you know, just because they were at this
Especially
event.
When you're doing a lot of things.
Exactly. There's a huge, you know, amount of contributing factors. But it's another measure that you can look at. We look at like kind of influenced, pipeline influenced from the event. And again, there's lots of different kind of factors that feed into that. But yeah, look, I would say that, you know, for us, it's looking at new connections, it's looking at new contacts, the balance of prospects versus customers. And then it's that we interacted with. And then it's really about what you do after the event to follow up with them and to actually continue to then like nurture those leads, nurture those relationships that you started to build at the event. So that's where, for us, our sales development team plays a big role. So they, obviously, marketing will be, you know, wanting to continue to engage with these contacts that were at the event, these attendees, by trying to put out relevant content that might be interesting to them, trying to get them to continue to engage with us on our website, or come to, you know, if, let's say it's an industry event, come to our actual owned events and try and, you know, continue to nurture that relationship over time. Because, as we said, it's not going to be, well, quite often it's not a simple, yes, I'm ready to buy, here's an opportunity, so it's what you're kind of doing after the event with those leads. And yeah, like I mentioned, the sales development team play a really important role in that. And also like our post-event marketing campaigns as well. So yeah, it's not a perfect measurement of event ROI. I don't think is a perfect science. And I don't know if it ever will be, because there are so many factors that feed into it.
Yeah. So I had a friend of mine, Jim Genolio, on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. The episode's about to come out. And he uses this analogy that I absolutely love, sorry to use it before you, Jim, in advance. Although this will be released after, so it'll technically be after. He uses the analogy that like a lot of people go wrong because they're out in the dark trying to get into their car and they're looking for their keys. And the place that they look for their keys is under the street light, because that's where the light is. It's not necessarily where the keys are. Yeah. Right? Just because that's where I can see. And I think that a lot of people fall out of love with things like events or brand, lots of other activities, because they can't see with any level of certainty what's happening and how it's happening. When they're involved in it, when they're out in the field, when they're having customer interactions, when they're at events themselves, quite often it's very clear. We get an intuition about it, but it's all the stuff that we can't see. People fall out of love with it and stop doing it, and they just do the things that they can see and they can measure. And I think that sometimes gets worse the bigger the business gets, because the people making the decisions that need to have understanding of what's happening in order to make the strategies are further and further and further away from the reality of what's happening. And so they want to have more clarity and more certainty. And so they focus towards the things that they can see with absolute guarantee. Things like lead generation. We generated 1,000 leads. Great. I can see them. There they are in the pipeline. Those are the leads that we got from that channel, and it's so much easier to do. But let's, but this brings me to a thing that I really want to talk to you about, which I know is something that you're, I suppose, a big believer of, something near and dear to your heart, which is how we approach things like brand and our perception in the market and all of those sorts of things. Do you have kind of like a top line overall approach to how you kind of want to go to market and interact with your customers or have them see you?
We do. I do. We do at Genesys. I guess I just wanted to take a step back on one thing you said there, and I think it's really important. You said like we focus on the things that we can see, like and as in the, from a marketing perspective, the channels that we can see and say, oh, this is driving X amount of traffic to our site, X amount of leads, X amount of revenue. And I think that is something that, again, like, for example, you can look quite often when you look at attribution software, it will tell you that your SEO is doing great because you're getting loads of traffic through organic search. All these people came onto our website and converted into a lead from Google search, like they just found us. But what that isn't telling you is, why did they search for your name in the first place? Why did they come across you in a Google search? Because they obviously searched for your company. So, and that's kind of going back to the point about, events and other channels, not just events, but like social media is a big one, where it's harder to track the immediate ROI, but that person who came onto your website through Google search quite probably and possibly could have been the same person that 2 months ago you met. You saw, they saw you at this event. They saw you speaking on stage, or they met with a customer of yours at an event and spoke about, what work they were doing with you. All of that stuff is so much harder to track. But because we can see in attribution software, yes, it came from Google. It's like, great, our SEO is working, or it came from, Google paid search. Great, let's pump some more money into paid search, because that's where, that's really delivering us the leads. And so I think, but it's like that, all that's showing us is where we first captured that lead, where we first captured the demand, not where it was actually generated 6 months ago or 8 months ago or however long ago that they first heard of your organization. And that could have been through, a social media post that one of your team did, that they just happened to stumble across and read something about. It could have been through word of mouth. It could have been through an event. There's so many different places that they initially could have heard of you, and sort of just relying on that, the attribution software that we do look at, that tells us, it came from paid search. Like that's obviously not giving us the complete picture. It's giving us part of it, which is useful, but it's not giving us the whole picture. And so, just wanted to comment on that, because you kind of touching on that. And I know that.
No, I think it's super important. And like, if the search is branded, if they're coming specifically for you, they've Googled your name. If you're targeting your own name on paid ads, it might be because a competitor is trying to outbid you. But if it's just through organic search, then that's probably not their. It's probably not where the demand. It's almost certainly not where the demand was created. No one's looking for your name. I mean, if they're searching for keywords, it's a different story. But if they're searching for your name, it's almost certainly not where it came from. I think it's really important for people to differentiate that, because otherwise they just go and spend a whole bunch of money with an SEO agency instead of spending more money on producing content, going to events, working with their clients to get referrals. I think that's probably one of the biggest missed opportunities for so many businesses is, how are we generating referrals from our own clients and how are we tracking it? Do you have a way that you track all of this stuff? I've sidetracked us as well with a separate question. I think this is a more interesting line.
So, I mean, so we, in terms of referrals, we have the kind of, there's lots of different referral channels. So there's like your referral sites, like the G2 Crowd and Trustpilot, if that's kind of your industry, and Gartner peer insights, and there's those kind of referral sites where there's actual referrals in writing from your customer, and of course we can track traffic and things that are coming from those sites, so that's helpful. And we, our customer advocacy and engagement team has programs in place to try and encourage our customers to obviously put reviews on those sites. There's trying to incentivize that. But when it comes to kind of word of mouth referrals, that's all really part of dark social. That's where, again, we don't know every person who's talking to every one of our customers who might be talking to another person out there in their industry and mentioning our name, or, saying that they had a good experience working with us. That's again where you can't track that stuff.
How do you capture those things that happen in the dark, that aren't under the street light?
Yeah, I mean, look.
How do you know they're happening?
I think they're happening because you hear about them after the fact. You hear about, you start having a conversation with a new potential customer and they tell you, oh yeah, I spoke to XYZ, Sue from XYZ and XYZ company, and she told me that, that actually she works with you guys and it's going really well. And, that's why I got in touch with you. So we know it's happening because we hear that anecdotally from customers. I think the way you can track that, or you can try and track that, is to have more of a formal program in place to ask your customers, about that, where they heard from you. Did they hear from you from someone else? And you and I spoke about this just literally before we started recording this, but we both were talking about how we have listened to Chris Walker's podcast from Refine Labs, and he talks a lot about this kind of the software attribution model versus a self-reporting attribution model. And it's super simple, but it really can be highly effective, but just simply
it's what everyone used to do in marketing a decade ago. It's what all the B2C brands do, right?
Exactly. A form.
Where did you hear about us?
Where did you hear about us? I think in B2B, we have forgotten about that. Like well, let's just talk to our customers and understand, where did they hear about us? What were the different touch points they might have had that we are going to be completely unaware of? unless we ask them, because it's not going to be something that software can capture. So I think, yeah, like I'm a big fan of Chris's podcast and the things he talks about on this.
Revenue Vitals, that one is. Chris will be on the podcast in a few weeks.
Oh, brilliant. Amazing. I'll tune in for that one. Yeah, so I think it is about asking your customers and kind of, getting to know your customers. I think that's a big part of it.
Which if you're going to do, you have to set your your CRM and your tracking to be able to capture that. You have to set your forms to be able to capture it. You have to ask the question in the right way because like how did they get to you is very different to how did they hear about you. And the options as well. Like there's so many pieces to making sure you get it right. Like this is something we work with clients on when we help them implement HubSpot. We're a HubSpot partner.
Right.
Is like what are the options that you give somebody? Because if the first option in your list is Google, they may have Googled you to get to that point. And so the initial trigger is going to be, well, I've heard about you through Google. That's how I got here. So you have to be careful even about how you structure the list and then have a follow-on, like include it in the sales process. I can see that you selected that you heard about us through Google. Is that the first place you heard about us, or is that just how you found us? And just dig a little bit further, because the clearer that data is, my lord, it totally changes how you see some of these things that do happen in the dark, individual referrals, business community referrals, events, podcasts and content, all of that stuff. Even if it's 70% accurate, right? There's certainly problems with all data there is, but if it's 70% accurate and all of a sudden you're seeing that, okay, maybe 10% of your leads come from referrals and events and things like that, but 80% of your converted pipeline comes from them, totally changes the way you look at it.
Exactly. And on that form thing, the question of the form and what do you list on there? I mean, I've seen it as a customer myself when I'm filling in these forms, and they have like maybe 5 or 6 options, but they only give you, you can only select one. And you're like, well, actually, I heard about you from Google, but I also heard word of mouth. And I also follow you, on LinkedIn. I saw, you're like, well, actually, you're only letting me pick one, but there's like 4 on here that are relevant. And the other thing I think that not to keep talking about Chris Walker, but the thing he said is the form they have, it's the question they ask in a form, it's just a free text field. So they don't actually give an option. It's like you actually have to write something in that field. And I'm sure they probably get a lot who maybe just write Google. Like maybe that is, is part of it because it's the easy thing. But they also, with the stuff that they report, they get a lot that says, I heard so-and-so talking on this podcast, like you said, or spoke to someone at an event, and it can be really specific because you're giving the person the option to put whatever they want in there. So, definitely ask your customers, I think.
And I think depending on where you're at, like I can't imagine for you guys a free text field that somebody has to go through and analyze and categorize and build into reporting is probably going to be, not massively cumbersome. But the smaller you are, actually, like the more you should give people freedom to give you the answer that they want. Because, I mean, look, if you're a business owner and you're doing some of this stuff and you're spending $100,000 on an events marketing strategy, you want to know exactly what's going on with it. And you should be in that data and reading those free text answers. Maybe you might only have 2,000 of them to read a year, right? Get in there and inspect the data for yourself. The smaller you are, obviously the bigger you are and the higher the volume, the more you might need to rely on, specific answers, a drop down or something.
Kind of, like aggregating that data and reading something into it for sure. But I agree, like it actually digging into it yourself and reading things can be so revelatory. Like, you can look at stuff and actually be like, wow, like this comment is actually really telling me a lot. It's not just, high level tick a box. So I think that there is definitely a lot of merit in that for sure.
Nice. And so let's transition to the other thing that I want to talk to you about, which is
Yeah.
around, actually just, I'm going to ask it from a top level approach. Like, do you have, a top level macro belief, a core belief about how people should go about marketing that, that you find is really, really important for being able to grow a marketing team, grow a pipeline, grow a business, so on and so forth? Like, do you have an approach that you believe in?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing that I think is super important in marketing, and it's almost one of these things that can actually get lost in all the noise of all the other stuff. But the number one thing that's really important is know your customer. Like, you need to understand your customer, and you need to understand what they're going through, their pain points, their challenges, what their goals are, what they're trying to achieve, the macro issues of their industry that are playing into all of this, and talk their language. And you're only going to be able, it doesn't matter what channels you're using, what great program ideas you might have, how creative you are, all that stuff. If you haven't got that fundamental thing right of knowing your customer, understanding your customer, all of the other stuff that comes after it is probably going to fail, because you're not hitting them. You hitting them, that's a terrible word, but you're not conveying a message that resonates with them and makes sense to them. So to me, I think the number one basic thing is start with knowing your customer. They want to feel like, and I say they, I mean we're all customers. Like, we're all, the customers and prospects for a whole millions of brands and companies out there. And we want to feel like we have been, listened to, we've been heard, we've been understood, and a company, and then kind of, this is where it kind of moves more into like personalization and stuff, but we've also been remembered. They kind of, if you're interacting with an organization quite regularly as a customer of theirs, that actually you're being remembered, your preferences are being remembered. You're not having to go through the same kind of thing again and again and again when you're interacting with an organization. And that's whether it's from a marketing side, whether it's from a sales side, whether it's from a customer service side, that you are being kind of listened to, heard, understood, remembered more as an individual. And I'm not saying that, I work in marketing, I can be cynical about this. I know we're not all treated as individuals. Of course, you have to group people into, certain demographic segments or segments based on behaviors or things like that, because you have to, because of the scale of the audience that you're talking to. But I think that, being able to personalize things to some extent is really important. And that is, that comes down to messaging. It comes down to, again, like I said, really knowing who you're talking to. And I think that, like I said, if you don't get that bit right at the beginning, it can mean that all your other efforts after that are going to fail. And it can be really difficult for marketers, and not just marketers, salespeople, anyone who's interacting regularly with customers. It can be quite difficult because, let's say you're a marketer and you start off in a new industry, something you know nothing about. And I've personally done that so many times. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I've worked in mining or plastics and paper, and you're like, I know nothing about this. Like, I don't know the first thing. And day one in the job, you are kind of, okay, I've got to hit these targets. These are my goals. I've got to generate this many leads. I've got to generate pipeline. I've got to blah, 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 blah. So it's like execute, get, keep running with these programs, getting like, getting those numbers in the door every day. So that whole piece about, learning the customer, learning the industry, learning all that can sometimes be really difficult. And like to almost find the time. But I think it's something that you have to really be disciplined to invest in. And that a big part of it can be events, attending industry events. If you're new in an industry, going to those events and actually sitting in the sessions and listening and taking notes and understanding that, hearing people who are practitioners in that industry for 20 odd years talk is an amazing opportunity to learn your customer, learn about the industry. So that's a big part of it. I think, absorbing, like immersing yourself in the content of that particular industry you're going into, the media that people are going to consume, social media, joining groups, following influencers in those industries and learning about what they're talking about. And then crucially, actually talking to your customers. And in marketing, it can be quite difficult because, again, we're sort of a step behind, like we're kind of almost, can be behind an invisible barrier where we don't really directly necessarily talk one-to-one with customers all the time in the way that sales do, for example. Obviously, if you're in sales, you're talking to customers on the phone every day, you're having meetings with them, you're taking them out, you're doing whatever. So yeah, you're constantly sort of with your customers, whereas in marketing, a lot of the time you're like looking at data and you're rolling out programs but you're not talking one-on-one to customers. And I think that
and it's hard because you are you're talking to them one-on-one.
Exactly.
But they're not talking back,
you
don't get any feedback about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, we've got to be really humble as marketers to not assume that we know what our customers care about, without having done a huge amount of groundwork and getting that message right. So that's kind of the number one thing I think is so crucial for us as marketers, is to talk to our customers. And I really encourage that of myself and my team. It's like any opportunity we have to get in front of our customers as a marketer, because again, it's like I said, it's sometimes, day to day you're at, working from home, doing whatever, you're not talking to a customer, but any opportunity we have, we should, especially in the beginning of a new role or whatever, we should grab that and really be out there. Listening to their stories, hearing about them. Every year, one example of this for us at Genesys is every year we have an annual awards program for our customers called the Genesys Innovation Awards, and we encourage our customers to submit nominations about how they're using our technology, and it's a full global program. And every year myself and my teams get really heavily involved in helping certain customers with those nominations, because number one, it's good, obviously we want to help them. We are trying to help them win an award. But number two, it's amazing for us to speak. The way I do it is I take an hour on the phone with a customer and I literally get a full download of their whole journey, their whole kind of journey in our industry, which is customer experience, but with how they're using our products, what they were doing before, what the challenges were, how they approached the process to buy and implement Genesys products, then what they're doing with them now, what's changed, what's the impact on their business. And doing those, speaking to whether it's 6, 7, 8 customers, but really in depth, like I said, hour-long conversation. Yeah. It's super, super insightful, and I personally learn a huge amount from those conversations, which then really helps me actually with my messaging and with how we're going out to market to these customers, because I've just heard it from the horse's mouth or from 10 horses' mouths. So it's definitely something that I really highly value, and I'm always really grateful to our customers who do give us the time to take part in that program and stuff. So
that's a great example of finding an opportunity for marketing to get involved in that sort of deep customer understanding. I think there's a few versions of that that you can do as well. I mean, the easiest ones are, I think that marketing teams should be listening to sales calls. They should be attending sales calls, going to events, doing those sorts of things. I think another one is if you're going to do an annual customer survey, customer research program, where you do customer interviews and things like that. I think it's really good for the marketing team to be responsible for running that.
Yeah.
Awards, obviously a great one. I've seen in some businesses that, marketing teams are responsible for event registrations, right? proactive outreach for event registrations because it forces them to have conversations with customers, talk about the event, talk about the content, talk about the fit of that. Is it going to be right for them? I'm sure all the marketers listening to this are going, don't tell anyone to make me make sales calls. But any
User
opportunity.
groups. Yeah, I
User
think you can
groups,
have
great
user
one.
groups, you know,
Yeah.
like having like regularly meeting with your customers and having like a user group that marketing is either running, or if not running, heavily involved with, as in they are there at the group and they're listening to the feedback. I guess that's more of a formal, listening opportunity. But yeah, I think that's
Everybody else in the sort of customer acquisition chain has opportunities to talk to customers all the time. The sales team does, the customer success team, an operational delivery team, they're talking to customers all the time. They know their frustrations, they know the challenges, they know all that stuff. The sales team obviously are doing it all the time. The senior leaders quite often came from a customer background or have some kind of deep insight. I think marketers usually come because they're marketers and they understand marketing, and not because they understand the customer base particularly well. And so anything where the marketing team get to understand and get to know the customer at a really intimate level, it's so important. And it's so important for a whole host of reasons, including job satisfaction. People that understand their customers care more about getting great results for their customers and helping them, and they're able to do it better because they understand them.
That's so true, actually. And I hadn't even thought about that angle to it. That actually, but it's completely true, and it's really obvious now you've said it. It is a lot more satisfying once you actually know the impact that your product or service is having on your customers. Like it does make you a lot more engaged. It does make it more satisfying for you as a marketer or salesperson or whoever to really care more about what you're doing because you've seen and heard it firsthand from your customers. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, customer success stories is probably another one too.
Yeah.
Letting different people be responsible across the team for capturing, creating, etc. customer success stories, I think is probably pretty helpful for that too.
Definitely. Yeah. And it takes a full team on that side. It really does take a full team to, you can only have a customer success story when you've built that customer into an advocate. And that's obviously about having, this great experience with your company. So it takes that full team to deliver that, and then to, make that visible to the rest of the company so that we can kind of actually do something with it and turn that into a really great success story that we can tell publicly. We do that. That is something that myself and my team do a lot of is customer advocacy activities and customer success stories being a big part of that. And again, it's another huge learning opportunity for us as marketers to get to know the customers. I was just 2 weeks ago at a customer's office for the whole day when we were with a film crew filming our customer success story with them. And it was an amazing, it's an amazing opportunity to spend that whole day immersed in their business with them and actually, speak to different people from the organization, not just the one contact or the one person that I might have previously been talking to, but actually get lots of different perspectives, and just put their success down on paper or on camera in this case, and really celebrate that success and hopefully give them a great asset that they can be proud of, telling their story. But also for us as a business, of course, it's having this great asset of a customer in their own words, saying how our products have helped them or made a difference in their organization. So yeah, for sure, that's a really valuable exercise on so many different levels.
Speaking of marketing teams getting involved in some of these things, marketing teams tend to be a mix of a whole host of skills. There's so many different things that you need, sometimes quite technical skills to be able to deliver on in marketing. What do you see as like the mix? what are the skills that, we're going to do things from customer success stories through to, SEO, through to website, brand. There's 1,000 things to do that require a lot of different skills, a lot of different capabilities. What do you think is like the ideal mix? What are the core skills that you have to build a really successful marketing team?
I mean, it's everything you just mentioned. Creativity, data-minded, like analytics, good at kind of taking data and really like delving into it and analyzing things. It's kind of things like copywriting, messaging. It's if you're talking, organization and actually event kind of organization stuff, it's, being like really super kind of skilled at event management and also being creative with events. There's like PR side of it and understanding that. There's very specialist skills on the digital side of like you mentioned, SEO, SEM. There's a huge breadth of skills that modern marketers kind of need to have these days. But I think it's unrealistic to think that every marketer is going to hit every skill. Some people are going to be more creative and maybe less analytical. Some people are going to be a bit more on the data and analytics side and maybe not as creative, or maybe I'm just being, really stereotypical there, but some people have it both, have both, and they're great at both.
Some people can go between the two for sure, but some people, the people that are going to be the very best at being super analytical and in the detail are unlikely to be incredibly creative and spontaneous and all of those
exactly
things.
Yeah. And it does take a mix of both, and I think we have to be realistic that although we want to create really integrated campaigns, and to create integrated campaigns you need integrated marketers kind of working across them. So you're not just pigeonholing yourself and saying I'm a field marketer and I only do field marketing, or I'm a channel marketer and I only work with our partners and I only do enabling and co-marketing campaigns with them, or I'm just digital, that's all I do. I don't think we can be that prescriptive and be like it's only this and this and this, but I think we do have to look at it from a skills perspective, as you just mentioned, and it is about finding the right blend of those skills across a team. So and figuring out what roles that you actually, which particular roles you actually really, really need, and then, which skills fit those. But I think also, I mean, like at Genesys now, my current role, we have quite lean teams, but we have a really broad mix of skills. Like we do have, certain teams that not so much in the regions in APAC, but in our US head office, we'll have a team that is customer advocacy and engagement marketing, and that's their specialist area. However, in the region out here in APAC, we don't have a team that does that. We, as the regional marketers, need to look after that ourselves. So we can kind of lean on the expertise of that team in the US, get some direction, get some best practice from them, but then we take that and interpret it on the ground here, and actually can run those kind of customer advocacy activities here. For example, we just talked about case studies. Obviously that's a big part of it. The awards program, that's another part of it. So it's definitely a chance for us to develop those skills by not having one central person here who just does all of that, and it's part of the broader marketing mix. And I think as a marketer, you need to I think the most important thing is recognizing where your strengths lie and where you need like outside help, and whether that can be from an agency. So we definitely use different agencies to kind of supplement our skills in our marketing. So for example, in ANZ, in Australia, at the moment, we are just launching our first true ABM campaign. I would say we've done ABM before, what we call ABM, and we obviously do lots of LinkedIn advertising, and that's very much part of an ABM strategy. But I would
ABM
say
being
this,
account-based marketing for
yes,
those that
sorry,
are
account-based
not.
marketing. Yeah, so really targeting a certain set of accounts. The model of ABM we're using is one to few. So we're just targeting about 26 accounts over a 6-month program. And we're doing, we're rolling out a really high touch program to engage them across multiple different channels. And really kind of deepen our engagement in these accounts. And obviously at the end of it, hopefully generate pipeline, as we talked about, kind of pipeline revenue. But where I was going with this is because this is the first time we've done this in ANZ, or in APAC actually, we've engaged an agency. So we are working with a specialist ABM agency to help guide us on that journey. X Growth, I'll just give them a shout out if you're looking for an ABM agency. They're really good.
We don't do ABM, so that's fine.
Oh, sorry. I didn't check that before I did that shout out. Apologies.
That's all right. There's plenty of room for everybody, Sian. If they're good, I'd rather people were using them.
They are good. And they're specialists. They only really do ABM. So we're leaning on them because I recognized that we don't have that expertise in-house yet. I hope maybe in like 12 months we might have it. But at the moment, they're really like holding our hands and showing us the way. And I think that that's something that we as marketers need to be really open to, is we can't do it all. And obviously it does depend on your resourcing and it does depend on your budgets. And obviously you have to have some budget to be able to work with agencies on certain things. But it also, I think it's about prioritizing and understanding where your skills lie. If it's going to take you, copywriting, for example, that's something that some people are really good at and other people aren't. And no matter what, it's just not, copywriting's hard. It's difficult to write good copy, and it takes years to hone that as a skill. And even after years, some people just aren't going to be great at it, and that's okay. In that case, engage someone who is good at it. Don't try and do it yourself or do it in your team if you feel that you're not really churning out great copy. There's millions of people out there who can do it a lot better than you, and you can pay them to do it, a lot better than you ever could.
And some people don't have the option of doing it internally, Like a lot of our audience are SMEs. And if you look at the individual skills in a marketing team, copywriting, website, and especially like the dev aspect of website, all of the CRM and marketing automation aspects, field marketing, graphic design, video editing. I mean, I could probably name another 40 different things that you might need help with.
Exactly.
Most businesses can't have somebody to do each of those things.
Yeah.
And so, this is a problem that a lot of our clients have had. We're obviously an offshore agency. We help people hire people in the Philippines. But one of the things we've found over the years is that lots of people can't afford to bring in each of those individual skills. So, even to the point that we've made a whole content as a service product just so that we can churn out content for people, because you can't churn out content if you don't have a copywriter, a video editor, graphic designer, so on and so forth, right?
And if you're running a business in the day-to-day, you're not going to have the time to invest in that. It's a huge time investment. So
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think that's another. Yeah, you might have you can have all those things you mentioned. For sure, we use videography agencies, marketing agencies for various different specialist areas. Sometimes it might be things that we do have the skills on our team for, but we don't have the time. So it's like you've got, you do have the skills, and if you had unlimited time to spend on something, you could do it yourself, but you don't. It's then that thing of time versus money. Where's your time better spent, and where's your money better spent? Is it? And I think again, that's where we do that equation and lean on different agencies for those things as well.
There's so much to know in this world of marketing. I actually think for small and medium-sized businesses, especially founder-led businesses, I mean, it's just so hard for them to get all of the skills they need and all of the understanding and knowledge they need in order to be able to really make great strides. And so partnering with somebody who can help fill some of those gaps, I think is pretty helpful. But is there something in the world of marketing that you're really sort of focused on at the moment? Something, a bit of a bee in your bonnet, or something you're finding really important that maybe not enough people are talking about? Is there something that's, exciting you in the world of marketing?
Look, I mean, one of the things that I do have a bee in my bonnet about, we've already talked about, which is the attribution stuff. And it's the, I won't go into it because we talked about it a lot, but yeah, that's something that I am very focused on, because I do believe that it can lead you in the wrong direction. If, like we said, if you're paying too much attention to a certain set of metrics and you're ignoring other things that aren't as easy to measure. So that's something I do have a bit in my bonnet about. I think in terms of like things that are coming up and that are exciting, I mean, I think like personalization and how we can really leverage data and technology to create much more personalized campaigns is really exciting, like nowadays. The levels of personalization you can get to. I think, personalization can be super simple. Just addressing your target audience as who they are. If your target audience is finance managers, just talking to them as, hey, you're a finance manager and you're doing XYZ, we can help you with this. It can be simple personalization, or nowadays with AI and with the various different tools that are out there, you can get very deep into it. I think we have to be careful, as in it's as with any technology, and especially with AI, it's all still developing, and we can't just be leaning on it thinking AI is the answer and it's going to personalize everything and be great. I was actually at a LinkedIn event earlier this week about ABM, about account-based marketing, which I went to because I'm like, great, we're running this. And there was an agency there who gave some examples of an ad campaign that they created using purely AI versus another campaign that was with their human marketers. And they used AI for the copywriting, and they used AI for the images, an AI tool called, I think it's called Midjourney, which I haven't used yet, but I'm kind of excited to try out. So these were LinkedIn ads. And so the AI created some copy, create some images, and then their human team did the same. It was the same target audience, and they ran a test on LinkedIn with the human generated ads and the AI generated ads. And the human generated ads still beat the AI ones by a long mile in terms of clicks and conversion rates and cost per click, because I think when you look at it, the AI one was just trying to copy what is out there in terms of B2B marketing. It's like, and another thing that came out of this event,
it'll be the average of what's out there.
Exactly. And another thing that kind of came out of the event, it's a whole other topic that we don't have time to get into, was, what's the one word in the room? We were all kind of B2B marketers, and someone asked, what's the one word that sums up B2B marketing? The one word that came up the most was boring. Everyone was like, it's boring. Like, we need to, we need to really shake it up and try and talk to people like people, not like, so I think, look, AI is can be super helpful, really, for lots of different things. Shortcuts, making our lives easier, and also for personalizing campaigns. I think that's one area. I was just giving examples there of how it doesn't work, but I think it can also be used.
Personalization is such a funny topic because, look, first of all, let's just be honest. A lot of people get it wrong.
Yes.
A lot of companies don't inspect often enough, and their personalization is broken. I posted the other day a ridiculous picture of having bought a personalized suit, but on the inside it just said first.name. I think their workflow is broken. Some people think that just, first.name is the level of personalization. Some get it wrong. Some have. Sometimes when it's broken, actually it has the exact opposite effect you were hoping for, because now they know for certain that you're not a real person, or that you're doing it through templates. But I actually think that whilst AI will definitely make a huge impact to how much we can personalize. I think for quite a long time yet, personalization is still going to be far more effective when it's a person personalizing, because people have personalities, right?
Yeah.
Have conversations with people, and when personalization is based on conversation and interaction, I tend to find that it is effective. When personalization is based on no interaction, it tends to have a bit less, or a fair bit less, of an impact on the person that you're trying to personalize for. If
Totally.
that person has never spoken to our company ever, right? And we're trying aggressively to try and personalize for them, most people are pretty smart. They don't think that we somehow have some special insights on them, or if we do, sometimes they might find it a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
And so for me, like a lot of that stuff, I still think I want to personalize where there is actually a connection and a human interaction. But where that flips is around things like how we're targeting for, from a personalization perspective. Who are we choosing to target, and how are we choosing to target them from a messaging perspective? And using personalization, using AI for that, I think is super important.
Yeah.
But
And I think,
there's
you can
so many pitfalls.
there is, yeah. I was just talking, like, you can personalize things to a certain degree. It's the basics. This isn't AI. This isn't like this example I'm about to give. It's not AI, but it's like, and I'm sure you would have done this a million times over in your career, but if you're doing some kind of cold outreach email, you personalize that. You do the research about this person that you're just about to email, and you find out, what they posted on LinkedIn, or an article that they were quoted in, or a podcast that they spoke on, or whatever it is, and you are, looking for that hook that you can personalize that communication with. And that's obviously, on a one-to-one sales level. But I think there are ways of trying to pull in some of those principles into more at a bigger scale, and that's where I guess some tools can help us. That's where data, insights about past behavior, intent signals from third parties, all that kind of stuff can like help us as marketers to maybe not create that level of personalization, because that is a one-to-one exchange, but to create some personalization that's giving more context to the way that we're reaching out to that person, the channel, like as a marketing, through a campaign. So yeah, I think that's a big topic that is, we don't have time to talk about, but it's definitely something that, for me personally, and as a marketer, it's really important, and it's exciting. There's lots of new things that we can do. It's changing all the time. So yeah.
We're all going to have a lot of learning to do over the next few years to keep up, Sian.
We are.
We've got a lot of learning to do.
Continuously learning, yeah.
Speaking of that, I've got two more questions for you. Number one is there, look, I like to ask everybody that comes on here about learning. I have a belief that most people that are really, successful that have risen to leadership roles in big companies, or, successfully built their own business, all those things, usually they're quite self-led learners. Has there been a particular moment, a particular book, a particular resource, a person, something that really influenced your journey on, learning about marketing and how it all kind of works?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably quite a few of them. I have to admit, I'm a big reader of books, but I have to admit I'm not a big reader of like business books and marketing books. So I probably shouldn't say that, but there's obviously so many other resources that you can lean on. And one of the ones, if you're talking about really influenced me as a marketer, I would say, this is probably going back about 10 years now, but HubSpot and their content that they used that they still do put out, but the content like 10 years ago, I really think HubSpot was such pioneers in inbound marketing and in content marketing. And yeah, I used to absolutely, eat up all of their content. I read their blogs, I downloaded their ebooks. I had I created like folders on my drive that had all this HubSpot ebooks and things I would actually refer back to about, about inbound marketing, about content marketing. And I learned a hell of a lot from reading all that stuff. And that was an amazing example of content marketing in action, because they really, like I said, they really pioneered it. They gave me all this amazing content as a marketer that I could really use, and it was super valuable. So yeah, I think HubSpot did an amazing job in that arena, and still do today. I still do come across stuff of theirs that I read, probably not quite as avidly as I used to 10 years ago, just because of the way, my career's changed. But yeah, I'd say like there are some companies that are putting out really good content, and I consume that. Like we mentioned earlier, Chris Walker from Refine Labs, he is obviously a marketer. He's ultimately selling a product. He's a consultancy kind of, but the content he puts out is really high quality, and I do definitely learn a lot from that. Look, just more broadly, LinkedIn. I probably spend too much time on LinkedIn. I scroll, I read, I click on articles, I watch videos, I listen to podcasts that I come across from LinkedIn that I then end up, listening to for a longer period. So yeah, I think LinkedIn for me is a really big, like if you follow the right things for your interests, there's a lot of content out there that there's a lot of mediocre content as well, but there generally is some good stuff out there as well. So yeah, just a really broad variety of sources, I'd say. But mostly media.
Yep. And where can people find you if they want to reach out, and what might they reach out about?
Well, LinkedIn is where you can find me, I think. Like I said, I'm on there a lot. So yeah, LinkedIn is probably a good channel. What can they reach out about? Look, I'm keen to chat to marketers that have similar interests, like anyone who's, in my own, talking about my own interests right now, anyone who's running ABM campaigns and wants to chat, I'm always open to that. Like I love, I'm really keen to learn about that and understand other people's experiences. So that, look, I'm always happy to chat to other marketers. I enjoy connecting and meeting with other people who are doing a similar thing, or people who are just starting out in their careers in marketing. Like very happy to kind of share anything I can that might help you. But just quite open to connecting and networking.
Marvelous. Well, it's been awesome as always. Appreciate you joining the show. Appreciate you sharing, and actually, in some detail, some of the things you guys are working on. And sounds like you got a lot to get done. A lot of new bits and pieces, especially the ABM stuff. I think is super interesting. Something I'm certainly focused on learning more about. So appreciate you sharing.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's been good to chat and really nice to catch up with you as well. So thanks. It's been fun.
As always, thank you so much.